Yay. All right, kiddos, as you know, it is Black History Month, and we are going to continue on with some investigations of not only propaganda, but also of Black History Month highlights and things that are important to know. So to kick us off and to help some background knowledge and warm up some things that we know, we're going to watch a video called The ABCs of Black History Month. The ABCs of Black History Month. So what this video does is for each letter in the alphabet, it gives you the name of an important person or of an important concept or an important law that was created or passed that aided in the recognition of Black excellence, okay? So we're gonna take a look at this video, and then I'm sure you guys will see people that you know and make awesome connections, and I'm sure there'll be some things that you learn. So just take time to enjoy growing your brain, learning knowledge, and seeing about excellent contributions from our Black community. Here we go. Make sure the sound is shared and wonderful.
The ABCs of Black History Month. A is for Africa, the birthplace of humanity and civilization, and the second largest continent in the world. B is for Barack Obama, the first African-American president of the United States. C is for the Civil Rights Act, the 1964 law which ended segregation in public places and employment discrimination on the basis of identity. D is for Dred Scott, an enslaved Black man who unsuccessfully appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court for his freedom in 1857. E is for Emancipation. President Abe Lincoln freed millions of enslaved people when he issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863. F is for Freedom Riders, civil rights activists who took bus trips called Freedom Rides through the South in 1961 to protest segregated bus terminals. G is for the Greensboro Four, the North Carolina A&T freshmen who sat at a whites-only lunch counter to protest segregation. Their actions sparked nationwide sit-ins. H is for the Harlem Renaissance, the intellectual, social, and artistic explosion that occurred in Harlem, other northern cities, and Paris that spanned the 1920s. I is for Ida B. Wells, a journalist and educator who fought against racism, lynching, and sexism. She was also one of the founders of the NAACP. J is for Jackie Robinson, the first African American to play Major League Baseball in the modern era. He joined the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947. K is for Katherine Johnson, a mathematician at NASA whose calculations were critical to the success of the first U.S. manned spaceflight. L is for the Little Rock Nine, the 9 students who integrated Little Rock Central High School in 1957. The U.S. Army protected the students from violence. M is for Martin Luther King Jr., the most prominent figure of the civil rights movement who led peaceful protest against racial and social inequality in America. N is for the NAACP, the civil rights organization founded in 1909 to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of all people. O is for Oprah Winfrey, a media executive, philanthropist, actress, talk show host, TV producer, and North America's first Black multi-billionaire. P is for Phyllis Wheatley, an enslaved West African who was sold to a family in Boston. She would become the first published Black female poet. Q is for Lloyd Quarterman, one of the few Black scientists to work on the Manhattan Project, a top-secret effort to build the atomic bomb during World War II. R is for Rosa Parks, an activist who refused to give up her seat to a white rider on a segregated bus. This helped spark the Montgomery bus boycott. S is for Shirley Chisholm, the first Black woman elected to Congress and the first woman to run for the Democratic Party's presidential nomination. T is for Thurgood Marshall, a lawyer who won several important cases before the Supreme Court, before becoming the first Black Supreme Court Justice. U is for the Underground Railroad, a network of secret routes and safe houses used by enslaved people to escape to free states and Canada with the aid of allies. V is for the Voting Rights Act, the landmark piece of federal legislation enacted in 1965 to protect voting rights for racial minorities, especially in the South. W is for Wilma Rudolph, the athlete who overcame polio, racism, and sexism to become the first American woman to win 3 gold medals in a single Olympics. X is for Xavier University. Xavier University of Louisiana is a liberal arts college that is the only historically Black Roman Catholic college institution in the U.S. Y is for York, an enslaved man who participated in the Lewis and Clark expedition across the western U.S. as an explorer and hunter. Z is for Zora Neale Hurston, an author, anthropologist, and a central figure of the Harlem Renaissance, whose work highlighted racial struggles in the South. Black history is American history.
Alrighty, any connections to that? Things that we already knew, things that we learned? Anybody want to share some connections?
Jackie Robinson.
I figured you would know Jackie Robinson, William. Big baseball fan. Awesome. Leah?
Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yeah, we just celebrated him on his birthday last month. Yeah, with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Levin?
Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks, what do you know about her?
She refused to let a white man sit in her spot.
Yeah, she had that spot. Yeah, and she was there, and she was actually not the first to do this, but she was the one who sparked a civil rights movement in that area of people saying, hey, that's not fair, that's not right. Aiden Hampton?
Wilma Rudolph.
What do you know about her?
She runs.
Yeah.
She's the best runner that there used to be.
3 medals in 1 Olympics. That is very, very amazing. And it also stated that she did so while overcoming a disease called polio. So not only did she have some racial battles to fight, she had physical battles to fight as well. Aiden G?
Did in the chat boycott.
And
because the people who sat in restaurants that they said were for white people, they wanted to have freedom, so they did boycotts and sat there. And even if the white people wanted to push them out of their chairs and kick them out of the restaurant, they still won't move.
Yeah. So the boycotts are a form of protest, and there were several different boycotts for different purposes. There was a bus boycott to end segregated buses. Aiden described some of the restaurant boycotts for us. It used to be that either it was an all-white restaurant or that there was a whites section and a blacks section. And that would typically the whites section got better service, had their food faster, looked nicer, was cleaner. And then the black side of the restaurant might have been ignored more often. And so those boycotts were where people came and sat and said, no, this is not fair. This is not equal. This is not right. Oscar, connection?
Jackie Robinson.
Same as William, yeah?
He was a baseballer. Well, the first African American baseballer, and he used to get people who used to throw trash at him when he was playing baseball.
Yeah, so he wasn't the first African American to play baseball, but he was the first African American to play baseball in the major leagues. And the major leagues are the professional baseball players, and that was only white at the time. Oscar shared something that's very heartbreaking, but is also very true. Because people didn't feel he belonged there, he wasn't treated very fairly. There are lots of great movies about Jackie Robinson's life that can give you better understandings of the battles that he fought and the bravery that he showed. And with your parents' permission, you might ask to check some of those out. William?
And he got judged, and but he proved everybody wrong. Everybody thought he wasn't going to be that great. It turns out he's one of the greatest baseball players that ever lived.
I think that's one of the greatest lessons that we can learn from people is watching what they do when they're criticized, right? It would have been very easy for Jackie Robinson and many other people to just give up and say, whatever, they must be right, or, oh, this isn't worth it. But because he didn't, he paved a pathway for many people to come after him because he took on the hard stuff for them. So, yes, looking at how we respond in trials and criticism and hard time is a great way to learn. Terrence?
Abraham Lincoln.
What do you know about him?
He he helped people or segregated laws.
Yeah. So Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States, and he was the president that signed a law that made slavery illegal. Okay, so he is the president that said this is no longer allowed in America. Now, many people chose to ignore that law, but he is the first president that put that into place so that it would have to start stopping. Aiden Hampton,
Barack Obama.
what do you know about Barack Obama?
He was the first African American president of the United States.
He was first African American president of the United States, and he was in office the term before, not this president that we have right now, Joe Biden. So we're with Joe Biden now. Trump was before that, and then Barack Obama preceded him. Elijah,
Oprah Winfrey.
and what do you know about Oprah Winfrey?
I watched her on TV.
Yeah, she's got a lot of programs on TV. She had a talk show for many, many, many years. And she talked with a lot of famous people. And then she also did, they called her a philanthropist. And a philanthropist is someone who cares about humans and tries to make life better for them. And she would have a lot of those conversations as well. Awesome. Levin?
Jackie Robinson didn't just play baseball. He
Tell us
played
more.
more than one sport. He played basketball, he played soccer, and a bunch of other sports.
A very, very, very athletic gentleman. He became famous for baseball, but yes, he did play many others. Thank you for that interesting fact. All right. So here's what's important, kiddos. Black history a lot of times highlights certain individuals over and over and over, right? And they are so extremely important, and we have to talk about them and we have to know about them because of how they changed our world. What we want to be careful of is that we don't make Black History Month about only a certain time period or only certain people, because there are so many great Black Americans and Black people, not just Americans, but citizens of the world that have taught us so much, that have provided us so much, that have invented so many things, that have created lessons, that have made beautiful works of art. And we want to make sure that we're celebrating as much of that as we can, not just like the highlights, right? So we're going to continue on in that investigation. As you guys know, we are going to be studying propaganda and creating an exhibit that celebrates him. One of the awesome things about history is that it is always being made, okay? You guys are living in history right now. It's being made, and someday people will read about the times that we're living in, right? Someday, years down the road, people are going to read about how Joe Biden became president one day, just like we read about how Abraham Lincoln was president. So we're living in history. So not only do we want to reflect on what has happened, but we want to take time to celebrate what's happening now and recognize the history that's being made. So that's what we're going to continue on with today. Levin, did you have something you wanted to say?
Is propaganda still alive?
He is still living. So actually, something that's very exciting about propaganda is that recently a lot of people have actually started to know who he is more often and more frequently because so he lives in California. And over the summer, with the George Floyd protests that were taking place and happening, propaganda helped to organize one and kind of became the spokesperson for one in a community inside of LA. And because he used his words and spoke about things that were very important, a lot of news stations were interviewing him and listening to him. And so a lot of people have started to know more about him. So not only is he alive right now, but he's actually still trying to make a difference in the world. And he's using his art and he's using his words and he's using his actions to get that done. So yes, he is alive. He is very well. He has several YouTubes that you can still watch. He has a podcast with your adult's permission that you could check out. But he's got a lot of stuff going on right now. And it's really an exciting time because his important message is starting to be heard by a lot more people.
So it's kind of like it's Martin Luther King Jr.
He believes, I think, in a lot of the same things. Today, actually, the poem that we're going to read from him is called Don't Listen to Me. And he explains a lot of the things that he believes in. So we'll get to know a little bit more about his message today. Yep. Yeah. What more? Okay. Well, I've shared with you that we will read a poem from his book every day. So that is what we are getting ready to do right now. And as you know, I also shared with you that not only does he have a book of poetry, but he also has created what's called a photo journal. And it's photographs of his neighborhood that he grew up in. So this, and I'm trying to focus it so it's not as difficult to see. Let me see if I can get something above the light. There we go. Well, it's difficult to see, but this is a picture of just a hand kind of resting like this, outstretched. So it's an open hand ready to be grabbed and ready to be joined with. So holding hands in unity. And I think that picture will make more sense as we read this poem. Okay. So this is called Don't Listen to Me, which is a very interesting title. Don't Listen to Me. Let me stretch my headphone cord. Here we go. I'm not delusional. This most likely is your first experience with me. Greetings, my name is Propaganda. I wrote my first rap in '93.
Not share your screen.
Oh, it's because it's the book.
Oh.
Simply put, fire-baptized battle rapper who's heavily influenced by folk music and found creative freedom in poetry. The combo is strange, I know. But let this one bake your noodle. I'm a son of a Black Panther with a Mexican spouse and Caucasian best friends. My writing tone now is not one that offers you a neat little bow to tie up all your problems with. I've learned enough to know that I don't know that much. I know God became a man to save us, and we still can't explain the pyramids. I know the ancient Mayans and Egyptian astronomers had a far greater understanding of outer space than we do. I know academia is so drunk on its arrogance and racism that they'd rather credit these accomplishments to aliens than admit we are not the smartest civilization to ever live. I know I really love my wife, my daughter, and mangoes. And for some reason, folks find it illogical to think that a perfectly designed universe screams of a designer. I know sarcasm is really the only time that most people tell the truth. I know chilaquiles and In-N-Out will be served in heaven. And it's a much better decision to shut your mouth when you don't know what you're talking about than to validate what everyone already thinks of you. I know color theory very well. I have a degree in illustration and intercultural studies and a teaching credential, yet I rap for a living. Let that sink in. Apparently, I don't know that much. Just good hip hop and the gospel. I'm a pretty simple dude. All I got is my all, and I promise I will give you that. Lower standards will lower the culture. The Roman Empire was destroyed because of lowered standards and moral decay. You know, they murdered each other and fed their own lions for entertainment. Humans left to their own devices seem to be hopelessly selfish and bent on their own destruction. Seems that unless a power greater than us captures our hearts, nothing will change that trajectory. Wealth, knowledge, and success just seem to feed the beast. But don't listen to me. We just met. What do I know? There are two statements in this poem that I think are very, very, very powerful. One of the statements is, it's better to shut your mouth when you don't know what you're talking about than to open it up and validate what everyone already thinks of you. And I think that that is such a powerful statement, because what he's saying is it's okay to say, I don't know, right? A lot of times in this world that we live in, people feel like I have to have the answer. I have to know it. I have to be the smartest in the room. And he's saying, it's okay. We don't have to know the answer. Sometimes we can say, I don't know. And that goes along with his other statement that said, I've learned enough to know that I don't know that much, right? So he's learned so much that he's realizing there is still so much for me to learn, because the more that we learn, the more questions we should have, right? The more often we learn, that should lead our brains to thinking, what else is out there? What else can we know? What else is going on? That's a really powerful concept. Did anyone else have anything that stuck out to them, or questions, concerns, or comments from that poem today? Levin?
That I'm the son of Black Panther.
Yeah, so we learned that his father was a Black Panther from the 1960s. Yes. And then he said he has a Mexican spouse and Caucasian best friends. So I think what he's trying to do right there is highlight that he has a lot of heavy influences from many different cultures around the world, right? His father was a Black Panther, very prevalent in Black culture. Caucasian is white, that's right. So he's got white best friends, and he has a Mexican spouse. So he has Hispanic culture inside of his life as well. So he's highlighting that he has involved a lot of cultures in his life. Great. Anything more? Any other connections? All right. I didn't wear the t-shirt today because I want to save it for the day that we do the museum, but we are going to take a look at one of Propaganda's YouTubes together for the first time today. And this is called Dear Board of Education, okay? Now, something that's interesting, and I want to show you, is you will notice that bored is spelled like, oh, I'm bored, I'm so bored. It's not spelled like the Board of Education, like who we talked with, okay? And he's doing that on purpose. So as we just read, Propaganda has several degrees. He has a degree in illustration and intercultural studies, and then he also has a teaching credential. So Propaganda did used to be a teacher, okay? Jason Emmanuel Petty was a teacher. And what he noticed was we were still teaching in America the same way we were teaching 100 years ago. Come in, sit at your desk, listen to the teacher talk, write your notes down, go home, right? And so he's saying, that's boring. I'm bored. So just like we just wrote to the Board of Education, this poem is his writing to the Board of Education for the country. Okay, so to our superintendent of education, to our educational directors that are working in the Capitol, he is writing to them, to the whole country's Board of Education. And he's saying, hey, we got to change school, right? The world has changed, so the way we change school needs to change as well. And this is his poem about that, okay? So take a listen, and then we can discuss your connections and thoughts and feelings after. So just like you guys wrote to the Board of Education for Lawrence, this is his letter or his poem to the Board of Education for the country. Okay, here we go.
Dear Board of Education, so are we.
Did you get that? We're Board of Education, like it's boring. Dear Board of Education, so are we. He's a good play on words. Here we go.
So are we. At no point in the lives that we actually live do we sit in rows and listen to pontifications. At no point did Mama pass written exams out on how to wash the dishes. No, she pulled the stool up next to her at the sink, handed us a dish rag, like, watch how Mommy does it, now you try. Learning by doing, such a crazy idea, it might work. Them stools felt like magical ladders into an altered universe. Into the grown-up world. Informational portholes, wormholes, into other places where kids were equals. Being made privy to information only those with driver's license and facial hair had. Who knew we were learning? No clue Pops was teaching us time management and budgeting. Miniature project coordinators. He said, I'm gonna show you how to do these chores. And if they're done when I get home, then that allowance is yours. Maybe some ice cream's involved too. Remember when we were in kindergarten and you had to learn about worms? Yeah, you went outside and you played with worms. What a novel idea. Dear Board of Education. Huh, so are we. Dear Board of Education, all I've learned from your system is the fact that it's just a system that you set up. And if I just repeat what you just said in Jane Schaefer method, then I've passed, right? You're just testing my ability to regurgitate. And if your best instructors are miserable, I'm pretty sure it's not the kids' fault. This pain I know firsthand. The grand learning moments, the innovative lesson plans that causes eyes to sparkle as if them students have just caught rides on shooting stars. These lessons have wings, only to get clipped to fit into the low-res JPEG you call a state standards. Why do you insist this is still the industrial age? My child is not a widget, and a school should not be an assembly line, making my daughter's diploma equivalent to an inspected by 2235 stamp. Dear Board of Education, so are we. So are we. Dear Board of Education, there's not a scantron on the planet that can measure inspiration. This is what our teachers pass on that matters. But you'd rather them do a jig to the tune of the AYP score as to avoid losing WASC, right? Nickelby got us shucking and jiving. But you can't measure a kid inviting their teacher to a quinceañera or a soccer game or waiting rooms at free clinics. I can name 10 kids offhand who would still be in handcuffs if it wasn't for Mr. Singer. Nick Luvano runs his own design firm, and he failed the exit exam twice. Failed. Dear Board of Education, I mean, can we not Google when the Magna Carta was signed? If your brightest stars are always dim, something must be wrong with your glasses. If every place on your body that you touch hurts, then your fingers must be broken. You are PhDs. You have 5 suffixes at the end of your names. You're the people that know a lot. How come you're not smart enough to know that you don't know what you don't know? Did anyone ever suggest that maybe we should test the test? Dear Board of Education, my dear Board of Education, so are we. So are we.
All right, there is our first propaganda hip hop poem. Thoughts, feelings, reactions? You guys are students in education. What do you think? What do you think of that? It's catchy, isn't it? It's got a catchy beat. Leah, that's okay. Do you want to share? Yeah, go ahead and share, sis.
I don't like it.
What do you not like about it?
That, like, I don't like about it because it's like going really loud and his face is coming up to the camera. I don't like it.
Huh. That's a pretty intense view, isn't it? And that can feel kind of weird, like, whoa, that's crazy. What's going on? So yeah, sometimes the way information is presented can cause an emotion in us. And it's okay to experience those emotions. Levin, what are your thoughts?
I'm gonna ask Leah something. Did you see his nose hair or something? Is that why you didn't like it, or did it look just confusing?
I just didn't like it.
It could be
Okay.
confusing. I can see what she's saying there, the way that it's presented and the chaos. Sometimes that's tough. Aiden Hampton, what are your thoughts?
I liked it because I felt like I was being told the right thing, and yeah, he was saying the right things about us, like how God created us and how we are right now.
Okay, so you kind of lined up with a little of the things that he believes. That
Yeah.
was true for you. Okay. You said he was saying the right things about us. So in terms of being in school, what did you hear about school with the Board of Education that you thought, yeah, he's saying the right thing? That makes sense. Any connections there? That's okay. William, what were your thoughts?
I really liked it because I kind of like the way he presented it, the way he got his point through.
Okay, so you thought the point was very clear. He was very clear on his message and got that through. Yeah. I think something that I really appreciated is when he talks about learning by doing, right? He said, your parents are never going to hand you a paper test and see if you know how to wash the dishes, right? They're going to say, here's a towel, wash them. And that's how they know if you know how to do it, because you're doing it, right? And then he said in kindergarten, when we learn things like worms, we go play with them, right? When it's time to learn about shapes, what do our teachers do? They hand you shape blocks and they say, go play. When it's time to learn about plants, what do? You go make a plant. You put a seed in, you water it, you put it in the sun. You're learning by doing. Okay. So that's what I appreciated about about his message was, let's stop doing a bunch of tests. Nowhere else in life do people hand you a test to see if you know what you're doing, right? You've got to actually do it to prove it. Nice. Very nice. Any more connections, thoughts, or feelings to this? Okay. Guys, great discussion today. Thank you for sharing your feelings and your emotions. And also, thank you for being brave enough to share if you disagreed with someone, right? It's okay to disagree with people. It's okay to have different opinions. And that's one of the ways that we can learn, is by talking with people who don't always agree with us. So thank you for being brave enough to share those today. We appreciate it very much. All righty.